Choice, your creative superpower. We have the power to manifest as we dedicate attention to our thoughts, but often miss opportunity to achieve the greatest good. Your superpower is waiting to be unleashed to unlock a fuller, more rewarding world for all. Join us every Thursday at noon Mountain Time for Choice, your creative superpower with Zoe Muro. And now, here's Zoe.
Hello, folks. How are you today? Welcome to the New Thought Media Network. My name is Zoe Muro, and I am delighted and honored, as always, to be your host for Choice, your creative superpower. We're coming to you from Oakland, California. If you're coming back, great to see you here again. This is your first time. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. As a religious science practitioner with the New Thought Media Network, and as a transformational coach, I have both a ministry and a mission. And each of those is to help people live their lives to the fullest. So we're here to explore. We're here to explore how wielding your superpower for the greatest good can co-create a most fulfilling life experience. You know, it's been almost 2 years since we started this journey, this exploration. And we've been exploring all the different ways that choice can bring about tremendous benefits for your life. Today, in episode 81, I actually want to consider the downside of choice. Oh, but you weren't expecting that one. Well, as I said last week, this is one of my last two episodes in this particular show. So I felt that it was worthwhile to look at ways in which choice can be problematic. Now, we've been looking all along at ways to make choice more effective, etc. But what about things that do happen with choice that can be problematic for us? So I want to get into that. Just take a look here for a moment. Oh, hello, Zoe. Hello. I'm reading myself. Yes. Hello, Shay. So, folks, as I was saying, the downside of choice. Do any of these sound familiar to you? Any of these scenarios? Like, hey, Jesse, what'd you like for dinner tonight? Veggie pizza, burgers, eggplant parm, chicken? Or, hey, Marie, should we run uphill all the way to the summit or take the much, much flatter trail, but the much longer trail? And with all due respect to the clash, should I stay or should I go? If I go, there will be trouble. And if I stay, it will be double. Well, how about this one? Have you ever considered, do you get to make a choice or do you have to make a choice? Okay. It says a lot about the choice to be made. It says a lot about our frame of mind. It says a lot about many different aspects of what's going on here. But let's face it, having to make a choice can definitely be extremely challenging, depending on any number of circumstances, conditions, state of mind. Okay. As much as we've been exploring these many, many benefits that choice does bring to our lives, we have to recognize that life is also filled with reasons that can make choice challenging, difficult. It could be frightening. It could even be distasteful. Perhaps it's the size of the outcome, the risk involved, or my favorite, who, when, what, where, or why. All right. Any of those, all right, any of those can present us with a challenge when we're looking to make a choice. Now, at first glance, an abundance of choices, that seems to offer unparalleled freedom. The freedom to choose your own path, to shape your destiny, to express your individuality. Beneath that apparent freedom lies a potential trap. A trap in the form of decision fatigue, analysis paralysis, and let's face it, the overwhelming pressure to make the quote unquote right choice. The promise of freedom, it seems, can be overshadowed by the burden of responsibility and fear. When we talk about fear, I'm talking here about the fear of making the wrong decision and then suffering the dreaded regret. The thing is, focusing on not becoming regretful, all right, that's hardly the way to make a solid choice. Okay. It's working from the perspective of what you don't want rather than what you do want. Given the current state of technology, in our own lifetime, or my own lifetime rather, I have experienced an astounding increase in marketing. Okay. Different marketing styles, different marketing avenues. And it becomes harder and harder to ignore them. In the 50s, that's 1950s, it was far easier to ignore advertising because it was basically limited to very traditional mediums of print, radio, and television. Today, digital advertising alone encompasses a wide range of formats: display ads, search engine marketing, social media marketing, influencer marketing, and more. What makes it even worse is that technology's ability to look through our emails and our web searches and then target each person individually. Right? I mean, search for a sunscreen and suddenly sunscreen ads pop up all over your email and your social media, giving you the, oh, you know you want this, don't you? The reason I'm getting into this is that research has shown that an abundance of choices doesn't actually give us much of a benefit because it can lead to decreased satisfaction, increased strength and anxiety, a sense of overwhelm. See, the more options we have, the harder it can be to make a decision. And the more likely we are to experience regret over missed opportunities, or as I mentioned, the fear of making the wrong choice. So I had mentioned a couple of terms: decision fatigue and analysis paralysis. So let's take a look at those. Okay. Excuse me. The term decision fatigue was coined by a psychologist by the name of Roy F. Baumeister. And it's meant to describe the mental and emotional strain that comes from making a large number of decisions. In his writings, he was talking about over 35,000 decisions that we make in a day. Frankly, that number has been questioned many, many times. But we know without a doubt that we do make hundreds, thousands of choices every single day. There's no question about that. Whether it's 20,000, 35,000, 65,000, I've even seen. That's unimportant. The point is, the more decisions that we have to make, the greater the issues. All right. So have you ever been in a situation where you've been working through a problem and you finally get to the solution And it's like, don't even ask me what my name is. Don't ask me to make any decisions about anything, right? That's decision fatigue. Then there's analysis paralysis. The feeling of being unable to make a decision because you're overthinking it. There's just too many variables, and we're always looking for just the right solution. All right. Problem with that is that you wind up not taking any action. All right. You just get stuck in that spiral. Well, there was an interesting little side note that I found when we're talking about analysis paralysis. During the Second World War, Winston Churchill was investigating the delay in the landing craft designers producing what they needed. I mean, they needed these landing crafts desperately. And he was like, what's the issue? And he finds out that they were actually arguing over design changes over and over and over. So he sends a message. The message said, the maxim, nothing avails but perfection, may be spelt shorter. Paralysis. All right. That is where that term comes from. All right. The idea of analysis paralysis. So I do want to be clear on this next point, right? Because this really has a tremendous impact on us. We live in a culture that celebrates choice and autonomy, despite the fact that so many aspects of our society, of our culture, works against the idea of having true personal choice because they're always pushing something specific. And the idea of autonomy, well, as long as you follow the crowd, that's what they want. All right. Because of that idea of celebrating choice and autonomy, social comparison, it's so hard to avoid. And we wind up measuring our choices and our achievements against those of others. It's been referred to as a culture of comparison, right? Which can breed feelings of inadequacy and insecurity. And why do we care? We care because it can drive us to make choices that do not necessarily align with our true desires or our values. We're no longer worried about keeping up with the Joneses. We want to have more than the Joneses. Why? Because we're bombarded by messages that purport to represent success and happiness. So we manufacture products which are constantly upgraded to the newest, the best, the things we must have, whatever. The same products which in the past lasted for years now become completely obsolete, unsupported, or break down way too fast. You know, when I was younger, we had the exact same stove in our house for over 25 years. Good luck finding one of those these days. But you'll be told that no matter how well your appliances are working, you have a choice to make. Are you going to get the newest? Are you going to get the best? All right. Think about what this does to the economy. I mean, it's great news if you're a manufacturer, but it's terrible for the ecology of our planet. Terrible news if you care at all about Mother Earth and her billions of inhabitants. We're talking about severe changes in weather patterns, depletion of natural resources, an overload of trash, destruction of the environment. etc. I almost said these are all possibilities, but the reality is they're here now. All right. So we have to guard, if you will. We have to discern what is the source of this information? What is the source of these triggers? What is the source of these things that are constantly pushing us to make choices? All right. Understanding where these things come from can put a bit of a, what's the word I want? I'd say like a buffer, all right, so that there isn't that immediate, oh, have to have this, boom. Okay. Think about it. Work it through. Is it really your choice? Another downside of choice, primarily because of social media, is that it's difficult for us to kind of hide from our own choices. All right. It's a very common occurrence. People tell me that they're struggling between choosing option A and option B. And they have all these people telling them, oh, well, this is the way to go. And that's the way to go. And well, I did it this way. I couldn't imagine doing it any other way. I couldn't imagine how you could even think of that. All right. And these things start swirling around. And they become a life and a force of their own, kind of obscuring the whole point of what you were doing in the first place. Okay. So here are people struggling. Do I want A? Do I want B? Right. And oftentimes when they come to me with this, they'll have a list of pros and cons, but they're not coming up with the choice. Right? So I've found in virtually every instance where this has been the case, the scenario plays out again and again in exactly the same way. I'll start off and I'll ask them, well, okay, are you certain that you're stuck right here, that you're stumped, you don't know which way to go? And they'll say, yes, absolutely. And I'll ask them if they're confident that the answer is indeed either A or B, right? Because that's another way that we sometimes create problems for ourselves when we're looking to make a choice. We believe that we have everything in front of us, but we might not. All right. If you get so fixated on A, so fixated on B, are you looking for C or D or Q? All right. But typically people will come to me and say, yep, absolutely. It's either A or it's B. And there's no reason why that's not necessarily true. Certainly could be. Okay. So I tell them I'm going to flip a coin, but I'm going to keep it hidden. And I'll ask them to mentally choose heads or tails, heads representing A, tails representing B. But before I reveal the coin, I'll then ask which one they were hoping to hear, heads or tails. And I'll tell you, folks, I have always been given a choice of one over the other. In other words, they knew what their choice really was. Honestly, I don't know why this works as well as it does, but it does. And the funny thing is, if you suggested right up front, just flip a coin to decide, they'd probably balk and say, there's no way to make an informed decision. I mean, I certainly wouldn't consider that my way of making the decision. So we hide from ourselves sometimes. We hide our actual choice. We hide our motivation. All right. So as much trouble as we can have from other people pushing things on us, we also have to consider, what do we do to or for ourselves? Okay. So it's not at all surprising that we struggle with choice from time to time. I mean, we want so many things to be right. We want so many things to be not just good, but to be the best. And why not? All right. So it's not at all surprising that we struggle with choice. And yes, it is very easy to become overwhelmed, even disillusioned. And yet, with all the complexities and pitfalls, there is still an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for self-discovery. By understanding the challenges posed by this choice overload, and engaging strategies so that you can navigate them effectively, you can reclaim or generate confidence, right? And that confidence enables us to choose well. And those choices enable us to lead a more fulfilling life, even in the face of this perfect storm of possibilities. We need a balance. And admittedly, it's a delicate balance of self-awareness, mindfulness, and acceptance. All right? If you focus purely on one of those without the others, we wind up with some interesting choices. I mean, the idea of being completely and totally aware of something can shut off the B, C, and Q possibilities and leave you only with the A and the B. All right. Acceptance, if you focus purely on acceptance, oftentimes you don't actually make a choice at all, deliberately, consciously. Right? So by cultivating mindfulness, for example, we can use that to discern between what is truly meaningful and what's really just distracting noise. Self-awareness can allow us to recognize our limitations, our biases, and empower us to make decisions that are authentic and aligned with our values. In earlier episodes, we spoke of the idea of the halo effect and the horn effect. Halo effect being that you tend to, if there's something that you like or believe in or trust, then you tend to ascribe all good things to anything that comes from that source. The opposite being the horn effect. If you dislike a person or a thing or situation, whatever it is, everything associated with it, you can choose without discernment, without that self-awareness, to ascribe only negatives. Acceptance enables us to embrace the inherent uncertainty of life, finding comfort in the knowledge that no choice is ever truly perfect. However, and yes, I'm going to bring out the big guns here. If one has a growth mindset, one can see the value in what one can learn from even a far from perfect choice. Not to mention, if we can relieve our choices of the burden of being designated as being right or being wrong or being good or being bad, we can allow ourselves many more opportunities to try, to explore, to push the envelope. Now, I'm not saying that every choice that you make is necessarily an appropriate choice. You still need to use judgment, of course. But leave out the judging. One of the enormous downfalls that I see when people are dealing with choice is the judging. All right? And they're not judging the situation, they're judging themselves. All right. oh, I should know how to do this, or I shouldn't have thought of that. Or it's like, that does not help. That does not bring you any closer to developing a sense of how to choose well. While we're talking about our own choices, take a moment to consider how often you've looked at somebody else's choices and just sighed. And it's like, how in the world could they think that that was an appropriate or a good or reasonable or an effective or a proper choice? Bear in mind, you don't live inside that person's head, heart. You haven't had their life experience. So you can't really know what prompted their choices. So again, no judging. Okay. And I'll remind you once again, our choices are never made in a vacuum. Our choices can be conscious, they can be subconscious, they can even be unconscious. Right? Let me bring this up. Okay. So our conscious thoughts are the ones that are based on our thoughts, our actions, and our awareness. Okay. Subconscious. These operate beyond our conscious control. And they're often associated with our dreams, with our fantasies, even our irrational behaviors. Subconscious also holds our memories, our beliefs, and our emotions that influence our thoughts and behaviors. So they're actors behind the scene. And then we have unconscious, excuse me, which refers to the deepest part of our psyche, the part that stores repressed memories, instincts, and desires. By the way, that term repressed memories has come under attack over the last few decades, in that the belief is some memories are not truly repressed, or they are deliberately repressed. Nevertheless, each of these acts upon us. Okay? Unconscious acts upon the subconscious, subconscious acts upon the conscious. As we've seen in our explorations of presence, of awareness, of mindfulness, clarity, thing, just a few, understanding the why of our possible choice is a practice worth developing, worth strengthening, and worth employing. One last thing I want to add in, and I'll actually let Shay express it because I see that she put this into the comments. I love when we can quote from songs and from bands. So Styx said, even if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Amen. Absolutely true. So, taking into account all of the downsides that we've looked at here, all of the difficulties, all of the strangeness of life that surrounds making a choice, being aware of your opportunities to make a choice, to recognize your choice points, and then making a choice is how you honor your role as the co-creator of your life experience. There's an excellent book around this topic called The Paradox of Choice: Why More is Less. The author is Barry Schwartz. Let me bring up what he had to say. Because we're talking about regrets. We're talking about probably the thing that drives people craziest about their choices. And this is what he had to say about it, which I found really interesting. He said, when asked about what they regret most in the last 6 months, people tend to identify actions that just didn't meet their expectations, right? Feeling that the choices they made really weren't what they had hoped for. But when asked about what they regret most, when they look back on their lives as a whole, people tended to identify failures to act. Okay. Make the most of your superpower, the power of choice. Make the most of your life experience. So, as I mentioned last week, and I believe I mentioned at the top of the session here, our last episode, our final episode for this show is going to be next Thursday on April 25th. I look forward to seeing you then. And I'll talk a bit about what I have coming up next. As always, I'll invite you to give yourself a wonderful gift of exploring the New Thought Media, right? ntmedia.org, right? Go there and see everything that we've got to offer. For example, today, Reverend Gina Calvario-Krupka presents The Joy is in the Journey. That's at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. 2 p.m. Mountain Time, The Vibrant Living Hour with practitioner Ken Ludwig. 4 p.m. Mountain Time, Brock Ford presents Spiritual Toolkit. Okay. So much goodness. If you are so involved, what's the word I want? If you are so inclined, that's the word. I was going to say so involved, but yeah, inclined. And you would like to help us spread the joy of New Thought. It's not just about spreading the message, the word of it. It's about the joy of it, the ability to live your life so much more fully. If you would like to help us with that work, by all means, go to ntmedia.org/donate. Help us make this a world that works, truly works for everyone. All right, folks. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until we do meet again, choose wisely. Much love and many blessings. Namaste.
Choice. Choice. Your creative superpower. We have the power to manifest as we dedicate attention to our thoughts, but often miss opportunity to achieve the greatest good. Your superpower is waiting to be unleashed to unlock a fuller, more rewarding world for all. Join us every Thursday at noon Mountain Time for Choice, your creative superpower with Muro.